Welcome back to Business Talk. As we said, our guest is Tony Worden. He's the president and CEO of Greenfield Cooperative Bank. So happy to have you here on the show.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Um, we've talked several times over the years. You've been president of Greenfield Co-op since 2021, I believe,
21.
and CEO since 22.
That's correct. Yeah.
I know you had a rich background in commercial lending. Before that, kind of take me through your career, how you got into banking world to begin with, and how your experience in commercial lending sort of prepared you for the president's chair you're in now.
Sure. I've actually had a circuitous route to what I'm doing, and this was not my plan the way it worked out. I graduated from UMass in a time when no one was being hired. The economy wasn't good. And my wife, well, she was not my wife, that she was my girlfriend, got a job at United Savings Bank up in Greenfield, which was owned by Vermont National Bank out of Brattleboro, Vermont. And she came home one night. I was working a dead end job somewhere and I was miserable. And she said, "Oh, they had a job posting listed in the break room. Vermont National Bank's looking for a junior commercial credit analyst. Do you think you could do that?" Like, I don't know what that means. And she's like, "Well, they want someone with a business degree and strong rating skills." I said, "Well," so she sat down at the computer and did a cover letter for me and put my resume together and went, worked the next day, put in the interoffice envelope up to Brattleboro, and they hired me. And that was 28 years ago.
Well,
So I got in this thing backwards, and I owe it completely to my wife, very honestly. But I did, as you said, my career came up through commercial credit, portfolio managing, commercial lending, government banking, back to commercial lending. And then 16 years ago, I got the opportunity to come to the co-op, which was actually, I was working out of Bank of Western Mass office on Federal Street, Greenfield. The co-op is the building right next door.
okay.
So I really just switched from one side of a driveway to the other side of the driveway, and just have been completely thrilled with that. And even if I'd never become president of the co-op, I would have been thrilled with the change. It's just such a good place to work. I've had 16 really great years.
What did you enjoy most about the commercial lending world?
You know what I really love about it, and what I miss now is I love like meeting people who had ideas, people who took a chance, started a business. A lot of times it was ideas like I never thought of, and someone had an idea. I said, I can make a business out of this, and I just have such respect for people who have that kind of that belief in themselves, and that they're willing to kind of put it all on the line to start something. And um, my favorite thing to do was to go out and see customers and just listen to their stories to get to know them. And and I kind of miss that now because I'm not a risk taker myself. I mean, that's why I went into banking. But it just used to, it was really a highlight. I used to enjoy getting up in the morning. Not that I don't enjoy getting up in the morning, but knowing that I was going out, if I had a couple customers I was going to go see, that really energized me. And I have a lot of respect for people who are out there starting businesses because it's not easy. And in many ways, the world is kind of set up against people who are starting businesses, no matter how much we try to make it otherwise. And um, I just have a lot of respect for those people, and it was interesting.
Oh, we're big fans of entrepreneurs and business. So I've been reading about so many over the decades. So I agree with you on all of it.
Yeah.
What did when I talked to you last year for a story, and you had mentioned and probably don't know if the numbers wrong, but essentially over the past like 15 years or so, your bank's commercial loan volume had creates like tenfold. What is the landscape like now? And how's the commercial business going now? Like, are people still active in it?
Yes, but not gung ho. We're still growing on commercial lending, but I think the market is a little soft right now. I think people are unsure of where the economy is going, maybe unsure where policies out of Washington are going, and I think kind of holding back a little bit. I mean, nothing has stopped, but um, there's not unbridled enthusiasm in the market at this point. And so I think there are some people, businesses who may be thinking about expanding, going into kind of new territory that need to kind of holding off to see what happens. That just kind of, that in general just kind of drags everything down a little bit. Yeah. And the real estate market, the other part of commercial lending is commercial real estate. And we're really seeing a softening in that. There was a run for about a year and a half where, we had a lot of good borrowers who were selling out their real estate because at the top of the market and they were getting offers they just couldn't refuse. I think everybody could see, days on the market for properties just were nothing. People were getting free offers the first day it went on the market, and that's just not happening right at this point. I think there's a little bit of a softening in real estate. So things are good, but they're not maybe as good as they were, 18 months ago.
Sure. I know the bank itself has expanded quite a bit over the years. I know you're is it 10 branches now?
We have 10 branches
In 3 different counties.
in 3 different counties.
Is there a strategy going forward for continued growth, or is it just kind of taking opportunities as they come? Is it smart growth?
Well, I mean, we all want to have smart.
Yeah, sure.
We're at this point. I think we're taking opportunities as they come. My predecessor, Mike Tucker, I think he had really seen that. We were founded in 1905 in Greenfield, so we've been in Franklin County all those years. And then in 2014, we took over Northampton Co-op, and that got us into Hampshire County. And I think Mike and see the natural progression was to kind of maybe work our way down to Hampden County, because Hampden County is a growing, population is growing, which is not happening. Hanford County is not happening in Franklin County for sure. And so I think there was kind of an idea that, the future might be further south than where we were. And so that was why he had the opportunity to pick up a branch in South Hadley. We did that in 2019, and it opened, unfortunately, like 3 days before the COVID lockdown happened in March of 2020. But that gets us kind of right to the edge of Hampden County there. We certainly can help our customers who are in Chicopee, Holyoke, Springfield out of that location. But at some point, I think we're going to have to make the move to Hampden County proper. But we're just not quite there yet. We've grown, we're about $840 million in assets, which sounds like a lot of money, and it is. But for banks, any bank at 10 billion or below can call themselves a community bank. So that tells you kind of where we are. We're at the low end of that. But we're getting closer to $1 billion. And I think as we grow a little bit more, we can take on some new opportunities. And that's really what we are looking for smart growth. I mean, I kind of chuckled when you said that, but you want to grow smartly, which I think we've been able to do. I give Mike Tucker a lot of credit. He really had a vision for this bank over the 20 plus years that he ran it. When he took over, it was a little over $100 million. And so now we're knocking on the door to $1 billion, and we're profitable. And so it's been done right. And my job is now to screw that up. So I just try to stay out of people's way for the most part. Yeah. Well,
I know as a community bank, I know you wanted to talk today about protecting against fraud and scam, and how a community bank like yourself helps people do that. This is October, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I'm just checking my notes on this to make sure I'm getting it right. And then your bank is participating in a couple of American Banker Association campaigns to help educate customers about frauds and scams. Tell me about some of that and why support.
It's one of the most heartbreaking parts of my job is hearing the stories of customers and the fraud and the things that they've fallen for. The scammers never take a day off, and really they prey upon people. It's always the people they go after, and it's always a high stakes kind of thing. If you don't do this right away, you're going to go to jail. You're going to get fined. The IRS is going to come and take your house. Those kind of things, and it really hits our most vulnerable populations. The elderly in particular, but even younger people fall for it. And some of the things that I've seen in the 5 years that I've been running the bank, it's just heartbreaking. And so we really attached ourselves to the American Bankers Initiative. The one big one that we've done for a number of years is banks never ask that, and just educating people on the kind of things. A bank will never call you up and ask you for your social security number or your account number, and just to get people used to the idea that if someone calls you up and they're asking for that information, you really have to think hard before you give it. Probably not your bank calling, because a lot of times scammers will pretend they're your bank. And so we really had kind of jumped onto that program, and I just think it's really important because you work all your life to have the money you have, and it really is heartbreaking as you get older. Now you're retired, and now you're losing your money because you've fallen for one of these things. And these are easy things to fall for. And that's really what makes this difficult, because these scammers are really good at what they do. They know what to say, and they present themselves as very professional. If it was easy to tell, then there wouldn't be a problem, and so we're trying to get as much information out to people just to know, be careful.
Is it harder to get information out to people in a time when a lot of folks are kind of relying on online platforms, which are so valuable? I mean, so you could the bank without ever going into a branch. So you might be seeing customers less. Is it kind of harder to sort of make those connections? And
It certainly is. It certainly is. And we're much more used to moving money electronically, Zelle, all the apps, and of course we use all those apps ourselves. And so, yeah, it is more difficult, but the benefit we have is we have the technology to get to people, the social media, emails, that sort of thing. And so we have more avenues to connect with people. But the flip side is that technology makes it easier for people to be taken in as well.
Sure. You're listening and watching Business Talk, a podcast presented by Business West and sponsored by Greenfield Cooperative Bank. We're speaking today with Tony Worden. He's president and CEO of Greenfield Cooperative Bank. I was told by a colleague of yours just today that check fraud is on the rise. That, again, I'm consulting my notes here to make sure I get it right. That even though check use is down 25% since 2021, reports of check fraud have doubled. So, what is check fraud? What forms does it take, and what makes somebody vulnerable to it?
It's funny. When all the technology came in and people started moving money electronically and using checks less, the thought in the industry was, well, there'll be much less check fraud that they're using now. And it's gone completely the other way. And really, the easiest way that there's check fraud is you could have an envelope stolen out of your mailbox and it has a check in it, and so someone now can get that check. With the copiers and printers and the ability to find the right paper, you can make a really good looking check. And it really has become a huge issue. The old days, the whitewashing of checks, someone steal a check and you could whitewash it. Well, just imagine that now with the technology we have now that makes it even harder to catch. And so it's become an issue, a huge issue in the banking industry. And we've seen a little bit of it ourselves. And I'll give you a really great example. One of the local municipalities that's our customer, I won't say which one, but we have a vendor that monitors the dark web to see if any of our customers' information gets out on the dark web. And we got notified middle of last week that one of this town's checks was up on the dark web, an image of this check, account number, everything. And so we were able to go to the town and let them know, and we could close that account out completely. They've sent us a list of all the checks that they have legitimately written on that account so that when they get presented to us to be cashed, we can check, is this one of the checks that they legitimately wrote? But it's a major hassle. It's a major hassle for the town because now they have all their systems set up based on that checking account. Now they have to change everything. And this is just, it got caught. They don't all get caught. And we've had other customers that really have lost significant amounts of money with the check fraud. Their check got stolen. They started cashing checks all over the country. This one, I personally really want us to focus on because of just the instances I've seen come across my desk lately.
So, what people need to know? What can they do?
Well, I think that the one thing I would do, and I told my mother, my mother is very old fashioned. She has outgoing mail. She'd stick it on her mailbox, and people, you always did that. You didn't think of it. The mailman comes by, he drops your mail off, he'll take the mail you want to mail with you. But you really can't do that nowadays, because people are going around and they're going up to people's mailboxes and they're stealing mail out of it. The other thing is to be sure that when you get mail delivered, get it out of your mailbox as soon as you can, because it's just ripe for the taking. That's where a lot of it is happening, particularly with the towns. We've had a couple towns that had that this happened to them. It's people had it stolen out of their mailboxes. So that really is the important thing. The other thing really is to know who you've written checks to. One of the things we're pushing on the business side and there's a product that's been around a while called Positive Pay. And so we're putting all our commercial customers, trying to get them onto Positive Pay where, every month when the business writes checks, it uploads a file to us and you fill out all the checks that they've written. And that way, again, when someone comes and presents a check, we can match it to their list to know that that's a legitimate check, the payee and the amount, things like that. This is one of the cases, technology gives and it takes.
Yeah.
And this is one where technology gives because of the computer technology, we can be much more sure if someone's in the program that these checks are legitimate.
Well, talking about fraud and scams, I know they affect individuals and businesses, and that's probably part of the messaging too. And they affect them in different ways. I mean, the individuals, a lot of times folks are preying on people's emotions and just take advantage of them in that way. But on the business side, what kind of forms do frauds take?
The big one is emails, phishing, that sort of thing, social engineering, all of those things. And, I'm probably not the best person to talk about it because that's not my area of expertise, but I know even at the bank, we do a lot of training of our employees about how to spot, phishing emails and how to deal with social engineering, someone calling up and asking kind of questions and trying to get, pretending to be somebody they're not. That happens a lot. And I think the important thing to know is, as you pointed out, that this isn't something that just happens to individual people. Like businesses can really be taken. And, you hear stories all the time now, someone's computer system was seized and it's being held for ransom and they want to get paid in Bitcoin and that whole thing. And it is really scary. I went to a seminar not that long ago with an expert on this, and he just told some harrowing stories about businesses that were really in large companies that were brought to their knees by this. And so the important thing is, your weakest link, your strength owning a business and your weakest link is the people who work for you,
Exactly.
because that's how the scammers get in. It's someone clicking a link in an email that they shouldn't have done. It's someone giving out information over the phone that they shouldn't have given out without really verifying who it was they're talking to. And so, from a business perspective, you really have to train your employees to know to not get caught in these things.
Is that something you're encouraging business clients to do, is to work with their employees,
Absolutely.
keep them safe and
Yeah.
and shore up those
Yeah.
weaknesses?
Yeah. That I said, I'd gone and heard the talk by this expert on this, and he said, if he had his way, all businesses would eliminate their email, because that's how everyone is. 90% of these scams get in through email. But of course, in this day and age, businesses can't get rid of email. I mean, that's how they communicate with each other, and that's how they communicate with customers. But it really does drive home the point that you have to be really careful about it. And so we really preach to our customers, to have a good program in place, to have good software, to have good filters, to have someone with some IT knowledge. I mean, that is the key. I know this much about this stuff, you know what I mean? But the IT people, they know the whole program. And so you really have to, and keep training your employees, you're testing them. That's one of the things that we do a few times every year is, our IT department will send out fake emails to people randomly, and we'll grade them to see if they click on it, did it open it up, or did they see it, be skeptical of it, and report it to IT. That's the other key, is if you see something you think might be a problem, got to report it to IT so that you can let everybody else in your organization know that there's these emails floating around there. It's education, education, education.
Does a lot of what you're talking about speak to the fact that you strive to be a secure financial institution? But the more important question is it important to sort of like help customers understand the security that
Yeah,
it,
it really, banking really comes down to trust. First thing, do you trust that your money's safe? And your information, do you trust that your information is safe? And so banks have to really toe the line on that, because if they get to if any bank gets to the point where people start to lose trust, it's all over for you. I mean, banking is all about trust. I mean, if you think about it, you're giving us your money, and you don't know where it's going, and we send you a statement and say, we have your money and you have this much on account with us, but we're doing so much with your money. We're lending it out. We're investing it. We're doing all sorts of things. And the banking industry relies on that trust, that that $1,000 you put in the bank exists, and anytime you want it, you can go get it. And if you get to the point where people aren't trusting that, then that's a real problem.
Sure.
And so we have to, the banking industry as a whole really it does a lot to make it known. Look, these are the steps we do. And I want everyone to know this is the security we have. These are the steps we take every day. Does it keep me up at night worrying about stuff? I don't say it keeps me up at night, but we discuss stuff like this all the time. I mean, it's always a topic of conversation. And us in particular, but the industry as a whole spends a lot of money on technology to protect people's information and protect the money. Trust without trust, you can't have banking. The system must work.
it's great, sir. Um, Too much time left. I kind of want to start transitioning from there back into the whole idea of a community bank. We talked about some of the ways that you reflect that description. When you think of like how a community bank serves a community and its customers, what are some of the things that make that different from, say, a giant corporation?
And the one thing I will say, the big banks, they're not evil.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's important to say. But I think one thing that a community bank can do is, we live and work in the communities that we serve, and we're operated. I live in Greenfield, just down the street from the main office. I work out of our main branch on Federal State Greenfield. We have 11 directors. They're all local people from all walks of life. All the decisions that we make, loan decisions, investing decisions, they're all made locally. And our focus is on local, making commercial loans in the local community, making residential mortgages for people to buy houses in the local community. And so our people, our management, our senior staff, we're all local people. And I think we're all, more than it just being good business, I think we're invested in the communities that we live here.
Sure.
And it's really important. And I got to say, all the banks in the Valley, and there are we're very lucky. I don't say this just because I'm in this industry, but we're very lucky here in Western Mass to have the number of banks we have headquartered here. As you go to other parts of the country, and it's not like this.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes we take it for granted that the banks are here, but it's really important because, we're all invested and we're all going to these events and we're all making contributions. And I think that really is the benefit of the local bank. It's the local decision making. But you have employees on the ground who are living in these communities and who are volunteering at events and this sort of thing. And at the end of the day, when the communities do well, we do well, because that means the community is doing well, businesses are doing well, people need a bank, and so it's in our best interest to have strong, healthy communities. And I think big banks understand that, but it's harder for a bigger organization to be nimble to do what they need to do. And it's just easier. You and I were talking a little bit before we started about a couple of the other banks that I worked at, and I worked at big banks, and great banks, good people. Um, but it was really nice 16 years ago to come over to a smaller bank. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. There's less levels of management. Um, you know, I, I, as the president of the bank, I'm not that separated from, the newest teller that we've ever hired. I mean, there's a couple layers between. That's it. We're very flat. And I think that really is the benefit. Um, you're not getting emails from somebody in Boston, about what you're doing in Greenfield sort of thing. We're all here, and it makes a nicer working environment. It was really what attracted me to come to the co-op 16 years ago was that ability. And plus the fact that I could have a 2-minute commute from my house to the office didn't hurt either.
Just to close out, I know before you had mentioned the things you liked about being in commercial lending is going on, meeting potential new customers. What do you enjoy most about your role now?
It's interesting. So my entire career up to this, as we had talked about before, was really kind of into commercial banking, starting as credit. Um, and so, I've worked in banking a long time. I had an idea how branches worked, but I didn't do it. I had an idea how residential lending worked, but I didn't do it. I had an idea how IT worked, but I didn't do it. And one of the things that I do find really interesting about this job is what I've learned about the other parts of banking and how important the other parts of banking are. Right? One of the things I will say is, commercial lenders tend to be a little bit self-centered. We all think the world revolves around us, and then the whole bank was created for commercial lending. And while commercial lending is vitally important to banks, you know, you have to understand that you wouldn't need commercial lenders if the rest of the bank wasn't working real well. If the branches didn't work right, if we weren't bringing in deposits, then commercial lending would be useless at that point. And that was one of the things that I've really enjoyed is being involved in other facets of banking and learning about that. And I'm a big believer. I mean, I'm getting old, and I'm starting to think about retirement here at some point in the future. But I feel like if you stop learning, life is really boring. And so it's kind of a fascinating job to have. And I'm very glad to be running an organization the size I'm running. I don't think I'd be equipped to run a $10 billion bank, and I certainly wouldn't be equipped to run a stock-owned bank. I'm running the right bank, and I get up every day and it's a different challenge. And some days I miss commercial lending. I miss the customers. I miss that interaction. But um, I, no day is the same as the day it was before in this job.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
It's one thing I appreciate about Mike. I've been here for 25 years at Business West, and I feel like I learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Talking to folks, learning about what they do. It's just you have to be a little really expert on something every day, and it's really rewarding. So I get that completely.
Yeah. I mean, it keeps your mind sharper too, having to learn stuff. It's, there's nothing like robotic about what I do. Although, I mean, we have calendars. And so every year certain things have to happen at certain times. But it's always different. It's always different. And, it's funny. When I was younger, I wouldn't have considered myself a people person. But as I've gotten older, I've gotten really to appreciate people, and I really enjoy the people I get to interact with at the bank. We have a lot of good people, and um, you know, I, I used to in my life. I mean, I used to be the youngest person at every place I worked, right? And then
Yeah.
one day you wake up and you realize you're not the youngest person anymore, and actually, then you might be one of the older people.
Nope.
But
I do that as well.
it's refreshing to talk to younger people,
Yeah.
and so it's I've had a great experience. Very pleased with it. Um, and I just thank God that my wife came home that day with that job posting for the junior commercial credit analyst, because I don't know what I'd do otherwise.
Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and talking about all that. I really appreciate it.
And I appreciate it. This was great. Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for tuning into Business Talk, podcast presented by Business West and sponsored by Greenfield Cooperative Bank. I'm Joe Bednar, the editor of Business West. We'll see you next time.